Commander Ok's voice was laced with disbelief as he stared at the tactical screen, which displayed a section of the Milky Way galaxy. His eyes narrowed as the room filled with high-ranking officers from the Galactic Coalition. Tension hung in the air, palpable and heavy. Each species present at the table, warriors from the battle-hardened Sherry, tacticians from the V, and the brutal Skora, had faced some version of the same problem over centuries. The humans, despite their apparent sloth, were always one step ahead in combat. The Coalition couldn't figure out why. How is it even possible? Alak continued, his eyes narrowing. Our spies report minimal military activity. Yet every time we engage them, they wipe the floor with our forces like it's just practice. The humans don't even seem interested. General Tvok of the Skora snorted, tapping his sharp claws on the table in irritation. It's not a mystery, he said. The humans are toying with us. They know they're stronger and faster. They're just pretending to play along, sleeping, as it were. The room stiffened collectively at the accusation. The idea that humans, small, short-lived, and from a backwater planet with the oddly poetic name Earth, could hold the upper hand against the mightiest war powers of the galaxy was absurd. Yet the evidence could no longer be denied. They are not toying with us, Admiral Krell of the Shagari interjected, his usually calm demeanor cracking. They sleep in every sense. Their civilization doesn't even fully grasp their potential. They're just dormant, reacting only when provoked. Even their ancient history is filled with skirmishes and self-contained wars, never conquering, never fully realizing the power they possess. Tvok snorted again. So you're telling me that humanity is just sitting on a mountain of untapped destruction and no one has seen fit to mention this before? They don't need to mention it, Krell said, leaning forward, eyes gleaming. Look at the data. In the last 100 galactic cycles, they've repelled every attack, won every war, without ever initiating conflict themselves. They awaken, strike, and then go back to sleep. It's not a strategy. It's a fact of their existence. Alak blinked, recalling battles where humans had seemingly appeared out of nowhere, decimated entire fleets, and then retreated as though the whole ordeal had bored them. He had assumed it was tactical genius, but this was something else. The humans are bored with war, muttered Krell, voicing the fear that hung in the room. Their species has reached a stage where conflict is a mere reflex. Ridiculous, Tvok growled. If they're so powerful, why haven't they conquered the galaxy? We've all seen what their ships can do. They could have steamrolled any of us by now. The room fell silent, the weight of the question hanging in the air. Krell leaned back in his chair, his four eyes narrowing. Because they don't want to. Conquest isn't in their nature. It's not ambition that drives them. It's necessity. And only when pushed. They only awaken when the situation demands it. Alak rubbed his temples, trying to process the enormity of it all. He had lost countless soldiers trying to figure out human tactics. They had dissected their weapons, analyzed their fleet movements, but nothing added up. There were no consistent patterns. Just victory after victory, often at the last minute, as though the humans were waiting until the very edge of defeat to strike back. You know what this means, said Krell, his voice tinged with an edge of fear. If they ever wake up fully, if they ever want to fight, he didn't finish the sentence. He didn't need to. The room stayed quiet, the revelation settling in. What could they do? How could they outsmart a species that treated war like a casual exercise? And worse, what if the humans one day realized just how easily they could end every conflict in the galaxy? Tvok broke the silence, his voice unusually subdued. Then we need to make sure they never wake up. How do you suggest we do that? Alak asked, his voice grim. How do you keep a sleeping giant from realizing it's a god of war? Simple, Toro said, his eyes gleaming with malevolent intent. You give it no reason to stir. Commander Alak felt a chill creep down his spine as the others shared his unease. It wasn't an unreasonable idea. If the humans never felt truly threatened, if they could be kept in their slumber, then perhaps the galaxy could stay safe. But if they kept poking them, if anyone made the wrong move, Alak hesitated. It could be the end of all of us. Admiral Krell leaned forward, his 4 eyes narrowing. Then we must ensure no one ever gives them that reason. And that includes us. Meanwhile, light years away on a quiet, unremarkable space station in orbit around Earth, Captain Hayes sat in the dimly lit control room, feet up on the console, half asleep. The human fleet was on standby, as usual, drifting lazily in low orbit. Earth, too, was silent. No pressing wars, no impending threats. It was as always, peaceful and boring. Anything on the scanners? Hayes asked, yawning. Nothing, replied Lieutenant Chun, not even bothering to glance up from his book. Just like yesterday, and the day before, and the year before that. Hayes chuckled, folding his arms behind his head. Good. Let's hope it stays that way. As Hayes let his eyes close, settling into the familiar, comfortable stillness, somewhere deep within him, at the very core of his species, there remained a slumbering potential, barely tapped. But for now it was asleep just like him. General Tvok's eyes narrowed as he scanned the reports again. Every engagement, every confrontation told the same story. Humans woke up just long enough to obliterate anything in their path, then retreated into what seemed like indifference. It made no sense. Even the most disciplined species in the galaxy showed signs of strain after prolonged conflict, but the humans seemed to shrug it off like they were barely involved. They don't take this seriously, he muttered under his breath. As the other coalition generals silently reviewed their own data, Alak shifted in his chair, clearly unsettled. If we push them too far, we risk waking them completely, he said, his voice low, almost hesitant. We've seen what happens when they feel cornered. The last skirmish wiped out 2 fleets, and they didn't even mobilize their full forces. Tvok slammed his fist on the table, rattling the holographic displays. Which is why we need to hit them differently. Force them to stay asleep. He gestured at the screen, where Earth spun serenely in its orbit, its human inhabitants blissfully unaware of the galactic panic surrounding them. We've been trying to beat them at their own game, fighting them directly. It's clear that's a mistake. They're too good at it, better than any of us. So we stop playing by their rules. Instead, we keep them distracted. Make them think there's no threat worth their time. And how do we do that? Admiral Krell asked, his voice cold but curious. We can't exactly stage a galaxy-wide charade. They'll figure it out. Not if we're smart about it, Toro said, pacing, his mind clearly turning. We don't fight them head-on. We use subterfuge, misinformation, little skirmishes that keep them occupied, but never fully engaged. We let them believe they're still untouchable, still the apex predators. They'll remain confident and stay asleep. Alak frowned. That's a risky strategy. One wrong move and they could realize what we're doing. And then, well, we all know what happens. Toro smirked, baring his teeth. That's the beauty of it. We make sure no one pushes them far enough to wake them up. We let the humans continue their little naps. Meanwhile, we quietly build our defenses and prepare just in case they stir. Krell leaned forward. If we go through with this, we'll need to ensure complete cooperation from every coalition member. No rogue factions, no freelance warlords looking to test their strength against Earth. If even one species decides to push the humans too hard, the entire galaxy could pay the price. Tvok agreed. No one challenges the humans. We keep them distracted. We lull them back into their state of rest, and we wait quietly until we figure out a way to deal with them permanently. Alak looked unconvinced. And if they do wake up? Tvok's eyes gleamed with something that resembled madness. Then we'll have prepared. We'll have enough firepower to face them if we must. But if we're lucky, they'll never know what hit them. It's a calculated risk. Alak pointed out, his words heavy in the room. Tvok scoffed. Do you have a better idea? Silence filled the command center as the Galactic Coalition leaders mulled over their options. The humans had proven themselves to be an enigma, capable of annihilating entire fleets with minimal effort, yet disinterested in galactic domination. Their technology, their strategies, their soldiers, all of it made no sense. They should have been a force of unstoppable conquest, yet they barely seemed to care about the wars they fought. Krell finally spoke, breaking the heavy quiet. We proceed with caution. Toro's plan has merit, but we don't underestimate the humans. We keep them complacent, distracted. If we can control the narrative, they won't see the threat coming. Olak sighed. I hope you're right. If this goes wrong, there won't be a galaxy left for us to fight over. On the outskirts of the Sol system, a lone human patrol ship floated quietly through the void. Inside, Lieutenant Chen sat at his console, flipping through various sensor reports. As usual, nothing interesting popped up. Space was vast and empty. After decades of skirmishes with the Coalition, things had finally settled into a sort of unspoken truce. At least that's what it seemed like. Chan yawned, stretching his arms. You ever wonder why they keep sending us out here? Captain Hayes glanced up from his seat, where he had been lazily monitoring the ship's status. Not really. Orders are orders. Besides, it's good to be out in space. Beats sitting around on Earth all day. Yeah, but nothing ever happens. Every few months, we get reports of some Coalition ship sniffing around, but they never make a move. It's like they're waiting for something. Hayes shrugged. Maybe they finally realized it's not worth the effort. We're too far out here. They can poke around all they want, but they won't come close to Earth. Chun chuckled. Yeah, probably. Still makes you wonder. They're always on edge, like they're afraid of something. Hayes leaned back in his chair, watching the stars drift by outside the viewport. Maybe they should be. They've seen what we can do. They know better than to push us too hard. There was a long pause before Chen spoke again. Do you ever think about what if we did push them back? I mean really push them. Not just the skirmishes, but an actual war. If we decided to, finish it. Hayes shook his head. Nope. We don't need to. We've got nothing to prove. Besides, why wake a sleeping beast? Chun raised an eyebrow. Aren't we the beast? Hayes grinned. Exactly. Outside the patrol ship, the vastness of space stretched in every direction, quiet, still for now. The Coalition's plan to keep the humans in their slumber unraveled faster than anyone had predicted. It began with a skirmish on the edges of known space. Far from Earth, a small faction of Skora warlords, tired of the Coalition's cautious approach, decided to test the humans. They believed the Coalition's fears were exaggerated and that the humans had simply been lucky in their victories. If they could score a decisive win, it would bring them glory beyond measure. They launched a surprise attack on an isolated human outpost, barely guarded, minimal defenses, and far from any Earth reinforcements. The Skora warlords expected an easy victory, a display of dominance to send a message to the rest of the galaxy. What they got was annihilation. The response from the humans was immediate and brutal. Within hours, every single Skora ship had been obliterated, leaving nothing but debris scattered across the empty void. The message from Earth was simple: don't push us. News of the Skora's defeat spread like wildfire. The Coalition scrambled to contain the fallout, but it was too late. The humans had stirred, and worse, they now had questions. Commander Alak stood before the assembled Coalition leaders, his face grim. The humans have mobilized. The room was tense, filled with the same high-ranking officers who had once hoped to lull the humans back into their dormancy. Now that hope was shattered. Earth had sent out scouts, warships, and communication teams, all mobilized and looking for answers. The humans were no longer passive observers. They were awake. They know something's going on, Alak continued. They're asking questions. They're demanding to know why the Skora attacked, and whether the Coalition was involved. General Toro slammed his fist on the table again, his frustration boiling over. Those idiots ruined everything. The plan was working. The humans were asleep, distracted, content, and now, thanks to the Skora, they're riled up. Admiral Krell, who had remained silent for most of the briefing, finally spoke. We need to de-escalate immediately. If they think the entire coalition is behind this attack, we won't survive what comes next. They already suspect us, Alak said, shaking his head. Our spies report that Earth's leadership is in discussions about whether this was a coordinated effort by the coalition. They're suspicious. Tvok growled, his claws scraping against the metal of the table. So, what do we do now? Beg for their forgiveness. Krell looked sharply at Tvok. We might not have a choice. The humans aren't just another adversary. They're a species that could end everything if they wanted to. And now they've been given a reason to take a closer look at us. Alak turned to Krell. You think it's too late? Krell's eyes darkened. I don't know, but I do know this. If we don't give them a reason to back down, they won't. We need to make them think this was an isolated incident. Pin it all on the Skora warlords. Do whatever it takes to avoid a full-scale war. And if that doesn't work? Tvok asked, his voice tight. Krell didn't answer. He didn't need to. The room already knew the answer. If the humans decided to unleash their full strength, there would be no stopping them.